Rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, fantastic. Okay, we have a roll call, please. Oh, I did that out of order.
It's okay. Chair Lorene?
Here.
Than I did.
Vice Chair Forbes?
Here.
Board Member Brumfield? Board Member Mathers? Board Member Peterson? Here. Board Member Strom?
Here.
All right, fantastic. Okay, and would anybody like to make a motion? Although we have had a request to change an agenda item, we have had a request to switch the third agenda item up to the second, or action item, should say, the third action item up to the second. Does anybody have an issue with that? No. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Anybody want a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're good. Okay, approval of minutes from the last LPA. Does anybody have any comments? Any discussion?
Move approval.
All right, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. Okay, comments from the public. Do we have any comments from the public?
I have none, Chair.
Okay, great. Comments from board members. The only comment I will make is that I am currently undergoing breast cancer. That's why I was not here last month, because I had to have major surgery. I started chemo this week, so I will be here as long as I possibly can. If for some reason I start feeling unwell, my lovely vice chair will take over. Okay? Great. Let's go. Action item number 3, I guess.
Do you want to read it or you want us to read it?
Okay.
Thank you.
For the record, Lee Baggett, City Attorney. This is Resolution Number 97-2024, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, granting a major conditional use petition for the Starbucks at Ocean East Mall located at 2300 Southeast Ocean Boulevard, as described within the attached legal description, granting relief to deviate from required building setbacks, minimum lot coverage, location of parking, and landscape requirements for the Southeast Ocean Boulevard overlay zone, standards outlined under the Land Development Code Section 3.03.00, requiring certain design standards to be considered, providing an effective date, providing for conditions of approval, and for other purposes.
All right. Do we have someone who's going to make a presentation? Okay. Fantastic.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chris McCrane, Principal Planner with the Development Department. Tonight I'll be presenting agenda item number 3, submitted by Kimley Horn and Associates on behalf of the property owner, Ocean East Capital Partners LLC, for a major conditional use petition for the project to be known as Starbucks at Ocean East Mall. So the 11.24 acre subject property is located at 2300 Southeast Ocean Boulevard and fronts the right-of-way of Southeast Ocean Boulevard to the north, with the Martin County Administration Building and the Public Library to the west and south. There's a mobile gas station, Redeemer Lutheran Church, the Barn Theater, and the East Ocean Gardens condominium to the east.
What in the world?
Is that Morse code?
I know, like, where is that coming from?
The site was developed in the 70s as a commercial shopping plaza and currently includes approximately 118,252 square feet of building area, with around 520 associated parking stalls and landscaping. Pursuant to public notice requirements outlined under Section 11.02.05 of the Land Development Code, on August 27th, 2024, the applicant mailed notice to all property owners located within 300 feet of the subject parcel, and to provide detail of the requested conditional use petition and the date and time of tonight's public hearing. In addition, the applicant posted a public notice sign on the property adjacent to Southeast Ocean Boulevard. So the subject parcel and properties located on the north side of Ocean Boulevard are designated by the B1 or Business Limited zoning district. The properties to the east and west include a mix of B1 and B2 or Business General. And the properties to the south and east are designated by the R3 Residential Multifamily Office zoning designation. Subject parcel and the properties to the north, east, and west are designated by the commercial future land use, and the properties to the south and west are designated by the public land use, and the properties to the east are designated by institutional land use. So just a little background, on April 29th, 2024, the Development Department received applications for a minor development plan and plat application. That was submitted also by Kimley Horn Associates on behalf of the property owner. Approval from the development director for the minor development plan application is required according to section 11.01.03 of our land development code for a non-residential development under 50,000 square feet in building area. The minor development plan and plat applications are currently under review by staff and pending a final determination of tonight's major conditional use request. Pursuant to Land Development Code Section 11.0105, the issuance of a site permit or vertical building permits for the proposed development will be contingent upon the City Commission's approval of the plat conforming to the minor development plan that'll be granted by the development director. So just a little background on the Southeast Ocean Boulevard overlay zone. On April 10th, 2000, the City Commission adopted ordinance number 1719-2000 and amended the Land Development Code to establish the development standards for the Southeast Ocean Boulevard overlay zone, which are outlined under section 3.03.00 of our code. And on December 20th, 2004, the City Commission adopted ordinance 2009-04 and amended the overlay zone section for a conditional use exception process to be considered and approved by the City Commission. So this is the commercial and multifamily section of the Southeast Ocean Boulevard overlay zone. And you can notice the property here in red. The 11.24 acre site known as Ocean East Mall was constructed in the 70s as a shopping plaza and currently includes the 118,000 square feet of building area. Typically for the general commercial uses including, but not limited to, the grocery, retail, shipping and postage, hair and beauty, office, and medical. Upon subdivision of the 11.24 acre site, the remaining 10.59 acres will retain the existing buildings and approximately 492 parking spaces, as is also required. And I'd like to note that the property owner has a legal agreement with his plaza tenants that he has a specific amount of parking that is required for each one of those tenants. The remaining 0.7 acre parcel, which would be the future out parcel in red, will be developed for a proposed 2,767 square foot Starbucks coffee restaurant with drive-through services and a covered outdoor seating area, associated parking, refuse collection, and on-site landscaping improvements. The 7.7 acre site will allow for the roughly 2,700 square foot drive-through restaurant, which is inclusive of a 500 square foot outdoor covered seating area, landscape buffering, pedestrian connections to the adjacent right-of-way, associated off-street parking, refuse collection area, and dedicated fire and vehicular bypass lane. So I'm going to go through the 4 requests for conditional use now, and starting with number 1, under 3.03.02, subsection B1, states that buildings within the commercial and multifamily section of this overlay zone are required to be constructed adjacent to the street along Southeast Ocean Boulevard with a setback of not less than 10 feet, and also the width of the principal building shall not be less than 50% of the lot width. The applicant's requesting to construct the principal building with a 64.2 foot setback from the front property boundary adjacent to Southeast Ocean Boulevard. to allow the proposed building width to be approximately 27% of the parcel width, as opposed to requiring a minimum width of 50%. The property was purchased in 2022 and the owner does not intend to redevelop the site at this time, and has decided to instead revitalize the site. He's currently updating the building facades, adding architectural treatments, and retrofitting the signage. And due to the existing building placements on Southeast Ocean of the Ocean East Mall and the adjacent church, gas station, office building, and retail plaza, staff is supporting the applicant's request to increase the building setback from Ocean Boulevard. And due to the code requirements for the drive-through, the queuing and vehicular patterns within the boundary of the outparcel, the applicant's unable to meet these requirements within the overlay zone. So combining these site constraints and the existing building placement on the adjacent properties, staff is supporting this deviation. And I just put together a little exhibit just to show the existing setbacks for the buildings on the adjacent properties, which is more in line with the building that is being proposed. Staff would look at this a little different if the entire site was being redeveloped. And I think it's also important to note that there's been one development in this entire overlay zone that's been approved, and that was in 2022. It's over in the other section of this overlay, which is the professional office section, closer to Palm Beach Road. There's a new building being constructed, which meets the intent of the code, but it's also important to note that that was a vacant property being redeveloped. I believe there was existing structures on the site that were built back in, way back in the day, and they ended up demolishing those and rebuilding the site. The other request that is being proposed, section 3.03.02, requires that 25% of the parking area or one row of parking may be located between the front building facade and the front property line, and that all of the parking may be located or must be located behind the rear building or at the side property lines. In addition, it requires that the parking be shielded by landscaping. So the applicant, because of the building placement and some of their site constraints, they're requesting deviation from this to locate 8 parking stalls between the front property line and the building facade, which is approximately 42.1%, or it does equate to one row of parking. So with the other 11 parking stalls that are located on the west side of the property, that would be approximately 57.9%. So this is the second request, which is similar, or basically a request because of the first request. So staff feels that these two requests are kind of tied together. This is another one of the requests, although I should point out that it's really not a request in the sense because the applicant has stated that they will meet the requirements depending on what the board approves for the setback. This section of the overlay zone requires that the landscaping be dependent or based on the setback of the building. So should we approve the setback, they'll meet that for item 2. If not, then they will meet the setback for item 1. But we would, a revised landscape plan would be required to be submitted under the minor development plan application, and we would review that based on our land development code and approved under that application. The last requirement, it requires that not more than 65% of the site be covered by impervious surface coverage. So upon build-out, the 0.7 acre site will include approximately 9.1% of building area, 70.2% impervious area, and 20.6% of pervious area or open space. Applicant has demonstrated that the proposed development would be de minimis in terms of the impervious and pervious area calculations. As the site currently exists, there's 79% impervious coverage and 21% pervious coverage. So the development is proposing 70 impervious coverage with 9% building. That equates to the same exact impervious coverage that's on the site today. City of Stewart Development Department has reviewed the major conditional use petition and recommends the local planning agency forward a recommendation to the City Commission to allow the proposed convenience restaurant to be constructed with a maximum setback of 64.2 feet from Southeast Ocean Boulevard, and to revise the landscape plan based on the approved setbacks. Also to deviate from the 65% minimum impervious surface coverage requirements, to allow up to 42% of the required parking to be located between the front building facade and the front property line adjacent to Southeast Ocean Boulevard, and to approve Resolution 97-2024 with any conditions the board determines. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant has prepared a brief presentation,
Okay,
and we can answer some questions from the board afterwards.
okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name's Christina Belt with Kimley Horn. I'm the civil engineer for this project. I'm here this evening with our traffic engineer as well as the owner of the center as well to answer any questions that you may have at the end of this presentation. I would like to start by saying thank you for moving us up on the agenda. It's much appreciated. So staff's presentation was very thorough and very well put together, so I appreciate that as well. So as staff mentioned, this is the aerial again to show this is for a proposed Starbucks. It's not for site plan approval, but it's for a recommendation of approval for the conditional use. The site is located at 2300 Ocean Boulevard, as staff mentioned, as shown in the hatched area on this aerial. It's within the B1 zoning district with a future commercial future land use. As staff also touched on, this isn't an old existing shopping center that this is a part of. So that's taken into consideration with our design heavily, because it is very, very important for us to maintain the flow and connectivity between this out parcel with the existing shopping center. And I'll get into that a little bit further in this presentation. I wanted to show, and it's a little bit hard to see, but at the, right here, this is the existing shopping center elevations, which you probably are aware of and have seen often. And this is one of the proposed renderings of the elevation that's happening now. So the owner is making significant improvements to this center to really brighten it up and refreshen it and make it a nice, very visual shopping center for the city. Again, these are just some more elevations to really show what the existing looked like and how it was very dated. And he has been able to come in, since he's owned it just since 2022, and made these changes to really make it look nice. And I wanted to share these because I also want to share this slide, which is the proposed rendering of the Starbucks. I want to show that there is cohesiveness between the existing shopping center and this proposed Starbucks with the look of it as well, not just for traffic and pedestrian connectivity, but also just for the overall look. It was taken into account. The proposed Starbucks will have pedestrian connectivity to, between the shopping center and the Southeast Ocean Boulevard. There's 500 square feet of covered outdoor seating. The hours of operation are 5:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. with 25 employees that will be hired. And Starbucks, as you may already know, because there is a Starbucks within the city, is a part of the Boys and Girls Club. All right, so here's the site plan. And although we're not here in front of you today for the approval of the site plan, as staff mentioned, these are very cohesive as far as the conditional use and why we need those waivers. Oh, sorry. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. The existing shopping center has a north to south drive pattern through it with one-way traffic. So when we took into account our design, we made sure that we were consistent with that to ensure vehicular connectivity and pedestrian connectivity was taken into account for safety, not only of the people that are driving, but also of the pedestrians that are walking. We want to make it as easy as possible to be able to get in, get your coffee, and move through the shopping center to exit. It should be noted that there are no direct connections to our parcel. Everything is through the shopping center. Just to kind of go over the site plan a little bit, there is the lighted intersection there, so customers would come through the lighted intersection and enter the site through here, or they could continue through the shopping center and enter through here. And then there's the existing connection over to this side, where they would come through and run parallel to Southeast Ocean Boulevard and enter here. Again, just touching on that this is the only way to enter is through the shopping center. The flow through the shopping center, as I mentioned, runs north to south this way, which is exactly similar, is the exact pattern of the shopping center. And the reason I wanted to go through that site plan a little bit was just because, as he mentioned with those waivers, I wanted to explain as well as the placement of the other buildings along Southeast Ocean Boulevard. It also, one of the main reasons for the placement of this building has to do with the site circulation through the site, which is the first waiver request that we're asking for, that he mentioned, that really triggered the other waiver requests that we're asking for. That has to do with the setback and the frontage along Ocean East Boulevard. As mentioned, we're requesting 64.2 feet for the setback, and really the overlay code would require it to be right along here, adjacent to Southeast Ocean Boulevard. If we were to meet the setback and the frontage requirements of the overlay, the building would have to be completely rotated with the frontage completely along Southeast Ocean, parallel to Southeast Ocean, which would require pedestrian and vehicular access to travel east to west. So it would be directly perpendicular to the existing flow within the shopping center, which would cause conflicts with vehicular traffic and pedestrians. This is the same images that you saw with staff's report, but this is the second waiver request, and it has to do with the impervious coverage. The code requires that we have less than 65% of impervious coverage, no more than less than 65%, and we do not meet that, but as it was stated, this is an existing paved just parking lot that's really vacant, and there's not much there, so we're not decreasing the pervious, we're keeping it consistent. I also would like to mention that we worked with staff just before this meeting to talk further about this, and something that we have come up with a solution to do is add permeable asphalt to the parking spaces that are along here and here, as well as some off-site permeable pavement here to meet the 65% requirement. So therefore, we will not technically need to request this waiver. And as the last, one of the last waiver requests is the parking requirement for the parking to be along Oceans Boulevard. Again, this has to do with the placement of the building and where the parking needs to be located. We're being consistent with the existing shopping center. They have parking as well along the frontage of Ocean East Boulevard. And so we are just asking to stay consistent with that. And although, as staff mentioned, we're not asking technically for any kind of landscape waiver, or sorry, we are technically asking for it, but we will meet the code. We will make sure it's provided, and we're gonna actually provide more than what the code requires. And so I wanted to touch on that a little bit and just show you what the owner is investing into this property to make the improvements. This is oh gosh, I keep doing that.
I think the batteries are dying.
Yeah, sorry. This is the existing corner where the lighted intersection is, and you can see the existing landscape. The buffer isn't very tall. It's pretty, low. The shrubs are kind of sparse. So we're proposing new shrubs. This is the afternoon shrubs, some flowering understory trees, which is code requirement, but we're gonna provide not just a code requirement, more in addition to that. So I really wanted to show what that was going to look like. These are some of the plant materials, the crepe myrtle, the flowering tree, the understory trees, and some of the shrubs. And I did have one other slide, I think, I didn't get it in, it didn't get in there in time, but we also are going to provide, let me see if I can get back to this. here along Southeast Ocean, we'll carry that same plant material palette out to make it very consistent along Southeast Ocean Boulevard. So again, to bring that cohesiveness with the out parcel and the overall shopping center. I think that concludes my presentation. And again, we're here if you have any questions.
Okay. Did we have any comments from the public?
I do not hear.
Okay, from the board now. Does anybody have any questions that you would like to ask? Okay.
So one of my questions was, with the current amount of parking that's in the facility, or that you need, I think Chris had said that is required by your other tenants, is there a possibility for you to build out future out parcels?
No.
So there's not enough parking, not enough, because there's a huge kind of sea between that and the doctor's office. And so once we make an exception here, it could continue to cascade down.
No, the agreements that the owner has in place, we are right, he needs to have a 4.5 parking ratio, and we are right at 4.5 with this proposed Starbucks. So there would be nothing further that would be able to come into
Okay.
play.
So there's no threat that we're just, because I know it's saying 10 feet, but if we keep allowing more, and then the next one's going to come. And so you're going to do pervious, so we're going to meet the
pavement.
65, so we
Yeah.
can, I guess,
I think so we don't need to, do we need to vote on that, or is that now not an
yeah, like how does
thing
that get
needed? Yeah.
handled as far as when we're voting?
We just amend it, or the recommendation? Yeah,
So now we only have 3 that we need to vote on?
Still
So
need
what
to
we would
amend
do
it.
is, after this meeting, we will write up the recommendation from the board and
Okay.
explain that as a condition of this major conditional use, unless unless the applicant can demonstrate the 65% maximum on their site, then we can't issue any permits. So,
Okay.
and also on the other site, so accumulation of the two. But we can write that into the conditions. And my staff report will be updated between the LPA meeting and the city commission
Okay.
meeting with a detail of what happened at today's meeting. So
Okay.
that'll be included in there.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Do you have more?
Yeah, so I guess that was the current, so you did answer, so you're going to have new shrubbery all the way from like the fresh market. It's going to be consistent across, it's not just going to be in front of the Starbucks. I understood that correctly. Okay. And then I guess that was it. The only other thing, I guess if we're going to the larger setback, we'll have more shade trees and not just low shrubbery, right? Is that the difference in between the 10 feet and the?
Yeah, there will be understory trees, which is what I was showing, the flowering type
Mm-hmm.
trees, so it's hollies, those type of trees. We can't have large shade trees along Southeast Ocean, like very, very large,
Yeah,
because of the power
power
lines.
lines.
Yeah.
But, and is there going to be landscaping along that? There's I don't know what you would call it, the ingress, egress, and where the light is?
Yes.
Will there also be additional landscaping there, or is it just along?
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, yeah, I think I just got the older, my presentation was, I had a plan that showed,
I can pull
right-
up the agenda and pull up the landscape plan. You want me?
yeah, you want to do that? Because it shows, so that when you drive in, that median island will have the hollies and the crepe myrtles. It'll carry along through to the internal drive of the shopping center as well.
Okay. Okay.
All right, awesome.
I had
Yes,
a
sir?
couple questions. So, again, just to clarify, so these changes within the existing parking will not impact the mall's parking that they're required? No. Okay, that's good. You mentioned seating outdoors, but I couldn't really see where that was. Was that in the back of the building, or?
It is located in the rear of the building, or not on the south side of the building, in this location. Yeah, it's a covered outdoor
Facing the
seating area,
plaza
Right.
On the back.
facing the
Okay.
plaza.
So this is the outdoor seating area.
No, it didn't, I was an outdated presentation.
And I'm
Okay,
s-
go ahead.
And I see where you're saying, so the plants are, this is the elevation, or not the
This
elevation,
is the
but the
landscape plan.
landscape plan.
Yeah.
So there's no opportunity to have the patio out front to make it a little bit more pedestrian and pretty versus
No,
the
not
patio in
because
the
window-
rear?
The window for the drive-through is located in the front to maximize queuing. We need to have, and stacking, to meet stacking requirements.
It's not the prettiest view, though.
Yeah,
We spent time, if I may, we spent time,
Oh, wait, come to
you
and
gotta-
state your name.
I'm Alan Eskenazi, partner of the shopping center
Okay.
development. Yeah, we actually spent a lot of time actually considering what you just asked for, moving it. it would create, and we obviously talked to Starbucks about it, hey, could you do anything about it? And what happens is a safety issue. If you move that to the side, the queuing, if I may,
Yep.
queuing here, this one doesn't show all the cars, but this is offering maximum queuing, right? The cars queue all the way around here. We move that to the side, queuing would be pushing it all the way back here. This is their entranceway, and there's a safety issue. They don't want customers, moms walking through a driveway where there's people queued up, constantly moving right here. So they wanted a queue line, I think it's stopping somewhere around here, based on how many cars. But they know exactly how many cars they need. So that's why they can't move.
So I guess, though, my concern is if that's the walkway up at the top left corner that's coming off of Ocean, if we had pedestrians coming over from the condos or whatever, they're going to walk all the way, so there's no queue on that far side of the building at all?
They're actually,
So they'll still walk through and around
take
it?
their order right there.
Uh-huh.
No, they take, or you pick up their, they
Pick up
pick
their-
up their
that's
food
what they
here,
pick
so they're
up there.
stopped here.
There's a stop sign here. There's a stop sign here, so there is a little, stop here, and they better be careful there.
Yeah.
Safety issue. This is something that I believe staff wanted, and we gave them to connect the sidewalks to the actual Starbucks. We didn't initially have that.
And where's the just, can you point out where the patio is going? Oh, it's back, oh, okay, so this, okay, I'm looking at it the wrong way. That's
Ocean's
going
up
East
top.
Ocean, that's going, okay, okay,
Yep.
There's a covered patio.
okay.
They take
This shows the
orders-
cars.
Where was the ordering, when they take the order from queuing? Oh, there's the cars.
Oh, there's the cars, yeah. There's the cars. So if you wanted to stop here.
See how it stops over here?
So which way do the cars go when they get there?
They're going around.
Oh,
and
they're
coming up the-
starting
Go
there.
out wide, okay,
There's the ordering window, that'll be covered ordering window,
okay.
and then pick up all the.
But
Oh, okay.
conceivably, if there's a lot of cars in line, which Starbucks tends to, the cars would kind of meet each other at the top corner going this way
Yeah,
and
that's
then
what I was
out
gonna
this
ask
way.
is what
So it
happens
is
if
going
there
to
are
line
more
up there.
cars than
Sure.
in the queuing? Because like in the morning, right, when everybody's getting
Oh,
their
yeah, that's
coffee,
true.
where does that queuing then go to?
Up along the walkway.
Cars, there's like 15 cars, there's a lot of cars here.
I think it was 10 is what the presentation had said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this maximize.
There's 12 on that.
This is, Starbucks knows, they're doing 60% of their business comes out of drive-throughs at this point in time. They know based on their expected volume.
Right.
What they need.
But let's say that something happens and the line is stopped because they can't deliver the coffee fast enough. Where do those cars end up waiting?
All the way back to where we're trying to avoid.
Alan.
Yeah.
She asked if you can speak in the mic.
Over here?
Yeah. Yeah, so it feels like you're going to be leaving here and entering here. like
Microphone
really
moved?
kind of-
How exciting is that?
They would queue all the way back if that circumstance happened where it was a backup on a particular
I would
day.
assume that they would have, they would have the employees would be out here to stack them up here. And then do the drive.
I don't think I've ever seen a Starbucks with people
No,
outside.
that's a Chick-fil-A thing.
That's Chick-fil-A, that's not Starbucks. Wrong franchise.
They're really good at that.
Glad you realize that. Chick-fil-A has become a big problem in shopping centers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Everybody loves them, but as a shopping center.
Yeah.
You got to have a lot of room for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, Starbucks is also, I mean, I do feel like those tail ends are going to meet each other on a busy day, but I'm not really,
All right, and then the last question I have is around the pervious versus non-pervious. What does that look like, actually? So when you said, well, we could just make the parking spots.
Oh, so the staff actually, the Publix, there's a Publix off, what is Baker Road?
Baker Road.
Baker Road.
okay.
Cornerstone?
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
And you really can't, it really looks just like asphalt, like you
does.
really would
Yeah.
not know that it's,
Yeah.
you really would not know that
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
different type of material, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay.
I was just going to ask about the dumpster detail. Is that a typical Starbucks dumpster detail?
No, this is city-required detail.
Are those carts or dumpsters?
They're actual dumpster
Two dump-
containers.
Do they require two?
Require it.
Per the restaurant, yeah, the use.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are in a big
enclosure.
covered.
area, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no way you could do one set of swing doors?
No, I'm sorry, no. Yeah. That's the typical detail for our utilities department. Based on the square footage and the usage, they have calculations for restaurant uses.
That's your code.
That's a City of Stewart Land Development Code regulation.
Right. All right, do we need to vote? We can vote one thing. We don't need to vote on all three separately, or? One, okay. Would anybody like to make a nomination?
The motion.
A motion? Motion.
We need to make a motion with our changes, though, correct? That we're
Yes,
going to
yes. You would
cover.
make, whatever the motion you would like to propose would include any changes that you would
Okay,
like
so we're
to
saying
recommend.
that the motion would be that they're going to cover no more than 65% is going to be.
Yes.
65 or less is going to be impervious.
Yes.
They're going to do the setback, but they're going to, in exchange, do a landscape
Plan that goes all the way, I think
all the way
it's more
across
extended.
Ocean.
Correct.
and the shade trees, larger, the setback, you're going to do the landscape plan for the larger setback.
Yeah.
Are those the three
I
items,
think
right?
there
Are
was,
we
was there
missing?
something that we've missed?
The part, yeah,
Parking.
which is also a request in their current request. So I
Oh,
think
to
the
allow the
amendment would
parking up
really
front.
just, yeah, it would just change the impervious coverage would be required to be met on-site or elsewhere on the subject parcel. Landscaping would be based on the setbacks, and the parking is allowed based on the building placement,
Okay,
and the building placement itself, of course.
all right.
Okay.
Somebody want to word that better than I did?
Okay, so let's go back. Although I don't know if I can make the motion. Is one of you two want to make the?
Do you want to make the motion?
Okay, so. The motion is to approve the conditional use for the parking, for the setback,
And landscape.
for the landscape with the increased setback, and for a maximum of 65% impervious coverage.
Well done.
I think we got it all.
Chris, if it's just setback, does that include the building placement?
Yes, that's the
Like
building.
frontage?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And the increased landscaping? Because they did say they would do the landscaping all the way
Yeah, I
down, and I think
Yes,
that's
and the
important.
increased landscaping.
All right.
That has
Is
to be.
that a motion that you made?
That's a motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. Would you want to go down the line?
Do we need roll call or are we?
We can do a roll call.
Okay.
Board Member Peterson?
Yes.
Board Member Forbes? Vice Chair
Yes.
Forbes, sorry. Chair Laureen?
Yes.
And Board Member Strom?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, the text amendment to the Land Development Code, non-medical marijuana dispensaries. But I'm really curious why we're doing this already.
Before, just in case that passes, I guess.
Yeah, that's really weird. Can I go ask ahead of time, like, why are we doing this before it's even voted on in the election? Why are we going?
Let me read it into the record first.
Okay.
All right, ordinance number 2531, 2024, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, amending and restating the city's land development code, more specifically amending section 2.06.23, entitled Reserved, and inserting supplemental use standards for non-medical marijuana dispensaries, amending the land use table in section 2.02.02 to include non-medical marijuana dispensary as an allowable use under certain conditions, amending section 3.01.03 to establish parking requirements for non-medical marijuana dispensaries within the urban code districts, amending section 6.01.13 to add off-street parking requirements for non-medical marijuana dispensaries, amending chapter 12 definitions for conforming terms, amending Chapter 30 of the Code of Ordinances to prohibit smoking in public parks and recreational areas, providing for severability, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for codification, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. And I can answer your question briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's non-medical use marijuana is on the ballot coming up in November, and an amendment to the Constitution. And so we are anticipating it passing. For instance,
Okay.
today I was in a seminar all day with police legal advisors and sheriff's lawyers.
Okay.
That's part of my job that I do part-time here for the police department. And we had a speaker that even said, reiterated 3 polls, and the lowest poll was 60%, and that's what needs to pass in the election. So obviously, it takes several weeks to pass amendments to
Okay.
our land development code, and so we're going through that step process. Now, We brought it up to our city commission maybe a couple months ago,
Okay.
and they requested to bring back something. They would like to see it more along US 1 type corridors or in business areas. They don't want it in downtown. So we have amended some of land development code to allow for non-medical use marijuana to be restricted in certain areas and to be sold at certain times, not to be too close together. And I'm gonna let Ben go through all of it, but that's,
Okay.
we had gotten some instruction from city commission to come back with something.
Okay.
So that's why we're here. So Ben's gonna go through
Okay.
the presentation.
And good evening, board members. So Ben Hogarth, actually Community Services Department, this was kind of a team effort across the board, so I appreciate Lee and the Planning Department as well. I'm not going to read in the interest of time, I'm not going to read every slide tonight. I think it's good to have the ballot text up there for anyone for the record. Of course, this is everything that everyone's going to see in November. Right now, there's a high degree of confidence of passage. I think it's also important to note both presidential candidates have now, as of 3 days ago, endorsed this ballot in Florida specific. It's also important to note that polling recently has been between 60 and 64%, and that was before then. So I think there's a high degree of confidence, and so as Lee said, this is really what staff kind of came up with, anticipating that change. And so it's important to also note 2016 was when medicinal marijuana was passed in the state of Florida. This is specifically talking about, as the ballot says, personal use, recreational marijuana, and how that will affect kind of zoning and use. So I'll just paraphrase the purpose. The whole intent from the commission in the direction that they provided staff back in June was to ensure that the downtown area in particular, the historic downtown area, is regulated in a way that would provide for the kind of continued success that we've had downtown. So, obviously we don't want to see what we've seen in other states in the West Coast who haven't had kind of controlled measures where just so many of these businesses open up in a small area, and it kind of creates its own culture. So there's a lot of kind of just rational basis for that. Staff recommendation obviously is to the ordinance that we had provided in the agenda is supplemental use standards in the land development code. This is similar to kind of where pain management clinics were put in land development code back in the day. It's where we felt it would be most appropriate. The ordinance that we drafted is a little bit unique in the sense that it touches both LDC and code of ordinances because, as you'll see, I think it's in Exhibit F, but at the very, very end of the ordinance proposed changes, we talked to, similar to Martin County, we've essentially prohibited smoking of any substance in kind of our public buildings and areas and parks and within 50 feet thereof. So I don't want to, again, in the interest of time, I know this was in your agenda packet, I'm happy to speak to any specific that we drafted in there. Without clear direction from the commission previously, we didn't know everywhere that we needed to touch, everything that the commission and certainly advisory boards would be interested in changing. What staff did do, because state regulations in Florida are so restrictive compared to states out west and many of the states that have already passed measures, local governments don't have a lot of measures on our own, even with medicinal marijuana, to choose the location and the zoning and all that. So what you see really is kind of from our best analysis and best guess in some regard to what we anticipate the Florida legislature will do once this does pass come March and April and May, when it starts to go into effect and they do the conforming laws. I think it's important for the public, for the board to know, the primary purpose of this is to ensure that the locations are for where these buildings can be in these dispensaries, specifically selling at retail sale non-medical marijuana, will not be downtown. If you look at the ordinance, we've placed it in the business districts for allowable use, industrial, CPUD, IPUD, and currently right now, urban highway, which would be a lot of US 1 that's north of the bridge, of the Roosevelt Bridge. So I'll stop right there just in case anyone who had read through it has any notes or comments.
I don't see anything mentioned in here. Do you have anything about not being near school?
Yes, that's a great question. So we spoke about two different distance requirements. I'll call it out specifically in the spot. It's Exhibit A. So one of the other things we did is we have both the ordinance that has all the additions into code in there, and then Exhibit A kind of shows you what it would look like in code. So depending on your preferred format, I'll just look through Exhibit A, but under distance requirements is Section E. So there's two. There's distance requirements from dispensaries from one another, and then there's dispensary distance requirements from schools, which is a state statute.
Right.
You might read it a little bit as weird because one of these two requirements reads as from entrance to entrance, and the other is, as they say, as the crow flies, or kind of a linear distance. We maintain a linear distance for dispensary from schools at 500 feet because that's kind of the way that the state statute words it. That's the bare minimum. We're happy to certainly take direction to expand that. We can go beyond the minimum, but that's part of what we wanted to have as that discussion.
Yeah, I would highly recommend expanding that so that it's nowhere near schools. And then do we have language also that it's nowhere near like residential areas?
Yeah, well, to a certain degree, yes.
Okay.
So I should probably bring up the maps to make it a little bit
Yeah, if you
easier here.
could, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, because we were talking today about like the ocean overlay, that's business, could it be along there? Because you've got houses just right behind all
exactly.
of that.
Sorry, I had one that was open already. See if you can see this one. Okay, so map number 1, and I'm going to try and increase the size of this. This would be the zone. This is the current Formula Business Area district, everywhere in blue, and obviously you have Colorado and Osceola, Flagler, all of that. The idea here, and certainly we're happy to take direction to expand this or contract it, the idea was to kind of overlay a figure where dispensaries would be excluded from being able to be permitted. So this would be kind of I'll just call it an exclusion zone. It would just be not allowable in this area specifically. And then we would have a second section, and we do have a second section that calls out the locations in the city where it would be allowable.
Yeah, I'm just trying
Okay,
to.
so where is, I'm trying to figure out if somebody
Sorry,
could kind
yeah,
of show me, because it's hard to read this. Okay, so over on the right corner up there, is that like, what is that area right there? Is that East Ocean? Where's East Ocean?
So East Ocean, if you follow my mouse cursor, this is East Ocean.
Okay.
So Confusion Corner is right here with the train tracks.
Okay.
So that line is at the hospital?
So this is, I believe, west.
Yeah, that's Seminole up there.
Oh, that's Detroit. Sorry. This is Detroit. It's hard to read on there. Sorry.
So what's at Detroit? Are we kind of towards Blue Door? Are we further than that?
Yeah, that doesn't go down very far.
It doesn't.
doesn't.
But there's like
No.
a pain clinic right after that.
There is,
Correct.
that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
You
so
mentioned
the pain
pain.
clinic is that building right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
to
part
the
of
right.
staff conversation was, should we go further down Ocean?
Oh, I think you
I
should,
think so, absolutely.
100%. I think
Okay.
you should go as far as the city goes down Ocean. But
Okay.
then I also think, I'm also very troubled by the fact, if you zone out, please.
Yep.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but in this area over here, isn't that Stewart Middle and East Stewart and like 10th Street, the Boys and Girls Club? Isn't that right there?
10th Street would be further to the east. It wouldn't be on this map, but you're absolutely right. As soon as you get past Memorial Park, which is right here on the right side of the map.
Okay, so
Right.
this to me has absolutely got to say no way in any area near Stewart Middle. I would not have it near Boys and Girls Club. I would not have it near like the 10th Street Community Center area. I just think that any of those areas
Well, there's
that
the hospital and
there's the hospital, it's geared towards children, should not be allowed.
Well, and also the whole like shopping district along Martin Luther or, is that Martin? Yeah, Martin
Yeah, it is
Luther
Martin
along
Luther,
there
right
where the
behind-
police station
yes,
is and all
absolutely.
the shops
Should
are there
not.
with the Boys and Girls Club across the street. You've
Yes,
got a lot of
100%.
pedestrians
'Cause
through
there's
there,
also a
a
rehab
lot of
place
families.
So-
right
Yeah.
across the street from the pain clinic.
Yeah.
And so like,
Yeah, that just
you
doesn't.
would not want to put
No,
So
you
I'm
would
gonna-
not.
dispensary right near
No.
the rehab.
I'm going to kind of bring this over really quick because this map shows a lot more. these were a series of maps that development put together of the downtown. Let me try to make it a little bit larger for you.
This is like really hard to conceptualize here.
Yeah, it's, so there's a series of maps here. This
Okay,
would be
now I
kind
see
of.
where you're at. Okay.
So everything that's outlined here, the red, I believe, are all the business district, but all the areas that you see colored would essentially be an allowable use in the future. So here's the colors: B2, 3, 4, industrial.
Okay, so where you have, okay, so go back.
Go here so you can see a little bit better.
Okay, so where it is red is where it would be allowed. Am I reading that correctly?
Correct.
But everywhere that is not red, it would not be allowed.
Yeah, so the other map that we showed, you're correct. This map, the purpose of this map is so that we do both things. We show where it's allowable, and then we specify where it's explicitly excluded. And one of the reasons why that might be important, if for any reason, I know we talked about the zoning in progress recently, if for whatever reason code changes in the future, where business district is, where each of these districts are, having this exclusion zone sort of will cover us in the future.
good. Okay.
So
Okay, I
that's
don't know-
our thought process.
I'm sorry, I don't know that this map and the color-coded map don't seem to jive
Yeah,
unless
so
I'm missing
no,
something.
and so I'm confused. I agree. So, because you're saying this is the only thing excluded, but then when you show the red map, I'm thinking, yeah,
There's-
okay, the red thing, that makes sense. But if it, I don't know, yeah, you're right,
It's not
it doesn't line
It
up.
doesn't seem to be the same. I'm missing something.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the color. Hold on.
Chris McCrane for the record.
sorry.
Just to clarify, it's not just the red section. So everything that has a color
Okay.
is a zoning district that would permit those uses. Everything that is not colored,
Let me zoom out
which
here.
is basically just an aerial, would not be allowed.
Okay,
So the red is B2, purple is B4. So you can see go to the legend.
Oh, yeah, it's up here.
So you'll see that these are all the zoning designations that are called out in the ordinance that allow for the use. And these
Okay.
maps are just depicting the locations where those zoning districts exist today.
okay. So why is there a random by Osceola,
Yeah,
like
so
that
that-
random
yeah.
dot?
That is actually a PUD. It's a commercial planned unit development.
What is it?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember which, is it the one by the women's
yeah.
club? I think it's Sada Salon.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Is,
Has its own
there's-
location.
It is
Okay.
the tiny little building. I know what you're
So
talking
that
about.
is an actual planned unit development, which was approved by the city commission as a zoning
Okay.
designation. So
Okay, so scroll to the one, but that's the bottom one. Okay, stop. All right.
This is going south in the city.
So according to this, the East Stewart area that we were concerned about along Martin Luther would not be an allowable
So
district.
if you'll remember, the East Stewart zoning designation has its own zoning code, so, and it doesn't specifically call out that zoning designation, which is the BMU, business mixed use, SFD, single family duplex, and GRO, which is general residential office. Those are not zoning districts that are allowed to have this use.
Oh, okay, okay.
they-
But it
But that
looks,
is one of the reasons for having the exclusion zone map in addition to calling
Yeah.
out the zoning districts,
some
because we don't know if anything is
Yeah.
going to
So
change.
maybe we can expand the exclusion map just so that if the zoning
Yeah.
changes and they put an overlay there of some other sort of zoning, now all of a sudden, I mean, because you do have doctor's offices and stuff all along, like, Ocean.
Correct.
But, I mean, that's me. I'm like a door away from a doctor's office,
Yeah.
but,
And if you bring up our zoning
I wouldn't
map, the majority of the zoning along East Ocean is R3, or residential
Yeah.
multifamily office, which is
Yeah.
not an allowed zoning district.
okay.
Right.
The exclusion zone would cover both
Okay.
of.
But
Yeah, let's do both.
I'm concerned because now on the other side of Dolphin, down by Kingswood and all that, now you're allowing it again. And while they are private schools, there are still schools with children on a regular basis down there.
What I would
And
add
those
to
are-
that, ma'am, is that, so just remember the distance requirements that we end up settling on, and we could increase that to something like
Yeah.
1,000 feet. No matter where this is allowable, that will still be applied anyway.
Well, and we had talked about distance. I went and talked to all these nice people, put up with me for an afternoon. But, I was looking at like from here, I know this is not an allowed area, but for an example, because it helps visual, like if we did it from here, Riverwalk, this could be a dispensary, Riverwalk Oyster Bar could be a dispensary, and the Flagler Center could be a dispensary if we did 500 feet.
Yeah, no.
So to me,
Nope.
or like the shopping plaza on, we also talked about like the shopping plaza at Home Goods.
Yeah.
If you look at Payway,
Yeah.
Home Goods, and the
Yeah,
mattress
no.
store, that could have 3 dispensaries in that same, so again, 500 feet just
Yeah, that
seems-
is not much. I don't
that's
even think
walking.
1,000's enough when it comes to
I was kind of
kids and
thinking
student-
1,500.
I agree.
But that may not be allowed, I don't know.
No,
Yeah, I know. Well,
15,000?
But is there a
Quarter mile.
reason why we could not restrict it to just that bottom part, that one corridor, and not even count, like, that area that's over by Kingswood that's more residential? There's some private schools there. Like, is there a reason why?
You can't keep it just along the US 1
Just along
corridor
US
and
1.
the industrial areas?
Again, we're here to get
Yeah,
recommendations
feedback,
from you.
yeah.
The city commission didn't give us a lot of detail. They definitely said no downtown, and they said they all seem to like US 1.
I like US.
I like US 1 too.
Our staff, we just
Yeah.
piece
Yeah.
something together, and we're looking for
Yeah, I
feedback
think
from y'all
US
to
1
bring.
makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
I
I
think the
wanna-
distance
And the
requirement-
industrial
agree.
areas, like over by Walmart and
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, I
off
agree.
of, what are, like,
Commerce.
Commerce back there, that would be okay, US 1 would be okay, but
Yeah,
I think
That's
the rest
outside the
almost.
city.
Commerce, yeah.
It's not ours, right?
Walmart's not ours?
No,
I thought it
Walmart
was.
is,
Yeah, I was
But
gonna
once
say,
you
I
go-
thought it was.
So
But there's a lot
Commerce,
there that's county. but
once, yeah, once.
Yeah,
you
it kind of
pass.
goes in and
They were
out.
annexed in.
What is
Right.
county, what is Martin County saying about this? Are they?
So it's a-
Nothing yet.
They don't have it yet. I was speaking to them within the last couple of weeks about it, but they weren't thinking proactively like we were. They do have a non-smoking in the parks already in place.
And we
it-
don't have non-smoking in the parks
don't.
yet?
We're adding it.
We're
It's in
adding,
this.
yeah,
That's
for
in
sure.
this.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I remember I used to be an assistant county attorney, and I was parks, and so I remember that being in place, and the sheriffs were enforcing it out at like Hal Patioki. So when I got here, I noticed that we did not have it, and
So-
Ben and I mentioned.
So we're saying parks, but does that mean that like people could be, like, say if you're at a restaurant and somebody, like, people smoke outside a restaurant, which is annoying enough, but like they could just be like literally smoking marijuana outside of restaurants?
Well, our ordinance is public, how is it defined again, Ben? Public land, including parks, or how do we?
Yeah, it says
Yes,
public parks and
within
recreation.
50 feet thereof, yep.
So again, we're looking for input from you guys on it.
How is the Riverwalk zoned? Is that a park? Like, so could somebody sit on the boardwalk at
Valid
Rock and
question.
Riverwalk on a Sunday smoking pot? Because it's not a park.
That would be excluded, so that would, you would not be,
Well, you couldn't sell there, but are we going to exclude it for smoking there?
Well, we do have it, one of the last, the amendments that we have to the Code of Ordinances addresses that. So I don't remember what
And
exhibit
is
that
that
was.
specific to marijuana? Like, 'cause-
Or just smoking in
or
general?
smoking in general?
Yeah, I say we vote to just say all of
I
smoking.
want to mention
Because they do have
the
the
feet.
cigar.
Yeah, oh,
saw
that's right.
I want to mention the feet distance. So, I mean, you said 15,000 or
1,500 maybe?
I don't, I mean, that's, I don't think it's discretionary. Let me give you an example. Sexual predator and sexual offender laws under the state of Florida is 1,000 feet from a park or a school. You can't reside if you're a sexual offender. And I think, I used to work for Port St. Lucie, and we had 2,500, so we expanded it that much.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you can't expand it.
2,500 is about half a
500
mile.
is the floor.
Yeah,
So we
that's
started
better.
off at the floor, and we're looking
Let's
for.
go towards the ceiling.
I agree. And then is there any way, like, because my only concern is, like I said, like you say schools, but is that just public schools? Because there's a number of private schools that are
That'd be-
in a certain area.
It would be
and-
any school.
Any school, okay. I wanted to make
Okay.
sure.
And then I guess my other thought was about, so with these dispensaries, that there'd be no smoking on the premises outside. Because again, the
It
home
said
goods
that,
plot, so the outside, that's in there, okay.
Okay, okay, all right.
So
well, that's good.
increase the distances.
yeah, I'm happy to read it.
She's got questions, might have questions on it.
Yeah, so one of the things while I'm mentioning that, I did bring up the map north of the bridge as well. So it's important to remember
okay.
US 1 does continue up there.
Yeah.
The dark purple, I believe, is urban highway. The lighter pinkish purple, that's more CPUD. So you can kind of see it's still mostly around US 1 there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So also, as you're talking about distance requirements, I want to mention this too. Remember, we have two different distance requirements. Number one is dispensaries from one another.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the second is the schools.
Yeah.
So if you want that number to be the same, I think that's okay too.
I would
We're
agree.
just looking, if it's
Yeah.
1,500 or 2,000 feet, somewhere,
Yeah.
that's the feedback we're looking for. And then, let me bring it up. This is all in Exhibit, it's easier to see it in Exhibit A, by the way, if you're looking. We also do have hours of operation, noise, lighting, and odor. We added that just in case.
You said odor?
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
So.
That's a big one.
Yeah, so a part of the challenge with this is forecasting other potential aspects of this law that the legislators could start touching. And so
Yeah.
there could potentially be a business that opens that doesn't even sell marijuana, just sells marijuana accessories.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
that's something to think about as well. We do call out, and sorry, I apologize, I'm trying to find exactly that spot, where, I think it's under maybe general requirements. We also talk about square feet with conditional use approval. So I think we maximize that so there can't have excess of, something else we talk with the city manager is having too large of a building. So we can't have, in this code right now, in excess of 2,000 square feet of retail space for essentially retail marijuana or
So they
personal use
comply, but
marijuana.
It's a super center. Like,
Yeah,
So-
there-
but they
no
could-
Buc-ee's for marijuana, no.
So they could have 3,000 square feet for medicinal and only set aside 2,000, is that how?
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good question, is how does
Yeah.
current medicinal coincide with this new,
Medicinal.
So the challenge, and this is part of where Florida, we're going to have more challenges than other states, because right now the state regulates or preempted the cities and the counties from regulating medicinal marijuana facilities and their locations. We have to regulate it the same as pharmacies. So we can't be any more restrictive than pharmacies with those. This has not been preempted to that degree yet. Obviously, the ballot initiative hasn't passed. So we don't know if they're going to attempt to do that also after the fact, but this is to get something on the books for right now, and hopefully everything prevails later on.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so can existing dispensaries that are medical now, like in the same location, like offer both, or is there restrictions on that?
So the way the ballot is a great question. The way the ballot initiative reads now, what's anticipated, because the distribution model is already in place, is for those facilities to start selling recreation the next day. Then the state is, because DOH, the Department of Health, is still regulating everything according to even this ballot. Even if it goes recreational, DOH still has kind of the authority for now. So as a result, we know that medical facilities can be the first licensed, potentially, those who, I should say, that dispensaries that sell
Yeah, why
medical
wouldn't they?
marijuana.
They already have
They already
distribution.
have,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Right.
if they're in an exclusion zone for us that we're excluding for recreational, or, because I'm assuming right now if it's medicinal and marijuana, it's maybe allowed closer to the schools or closer to?
It's interesting. Medicinal marijuanas are allowed anywhere right now, or medicinal dispensaries are allowed anywhere a pharmacy is allowed right now under law. But what's interesting is if suddenly the law changes and the ballot passes and recreational is allowed to be sold, they're grandfathered in their location. But by passing this, they're not necessarily grandfathered into the use of recreational marijuana. So this is an approach that staff really took time to think
Yeah,
about
'cause
how
I'm wondering
to.
if they'll be protected because they're still medical, right?
Right.
And then they decide to do non-medical.
They'll have to change location
not.
potentially.
They'll have to
And they're
change
not, right.
location.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, that's
So
good.
I think that's kind of an important, unless, if I'm wrong, Lee's free to correct me, but that's my.
Yeah, like we should, can we make it that if they go.
out as it rolls out.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they go if they're not just going one or the other, but if they adopt non-medical, that then they have to, comply with these rules.
more strict.
So regardless of if they
Yeah.
did non-medical, once they decide to do, or if they did medical before, once they decide to do non-medical, then it should apply to this,
Yeah.
is how it should read. Because otherwise, then they're grandfathered in where they're at, and they can do whatever they want.
So the direction staff is looking is kind of on a lot of these issues. One is that exclusion zone map that we had, and I shouldn't say that's the exclusion zone map. That was the starting baseline because we wanted to know if the formula. Sorry, let me pull that back up. If the formula, this is already existing in code. This is the formula business district, and when we're talking about expanding like past Osceola and Ocean on the east side here,
Yeah.
if you wanted to include it and how much further down.
Well, I think you should also include where are where are the medical marijuana places currently? Like, we should know where those are so that we can get an understanding of what that
Well,
looks
I
like right
think
now.
they're all on one, pretty much. like most medical marijuana
Yes,
places that I know.
yes.
Do we have any that are off of US 1 that we know of?
Because I'm having cancer free.
There might be one, and one of the other things we were concerned about is not just where medical marijuana locations are, but also where pharmacies are potentially already, because that's kind of has to be the same allowable use. So we don't have all the answers because we're kind of like trying to forecast what's going to happen. But one of the key things we wanted to get before we move forward to the commission is like, how should we expand this formula map for where everything's, no matter what, excluded?
So I would think, I actually liked his, so for two things, and I think we do the same amount. I like the 2,500 only because not only was it making it a good distance from schools, but it also means we can't all of a sudden have an influx. And like you talked about, the culture that comes with it, like an influx of these where people are just going to hang out and smoke pot.
Yeah, because how many miles is it from like just the Roosevelt Bridge to the end of City Stewart on US 1? You could kind of do the math of how many would actually be allowed if they're a half mile apart. You know, it would limit it from being an overwhelming thing, because 2,500 is about half a mile.
I think
My
so,
math's
yeah.
about right.
And also, is there a limit of the number of dispensaries? And is that a license thing that there can only be
So
5 in Stewart, or?
there is a state regulation on the amount of medical marijuana treatment centers. We anticipate that perhaps the state legislature will try to keep this well regulated and keep it to that for now. That has a hard limit in law, and basically they originally licensed 10 to start, and then every 100,000 people that signed up for a medical marijuana license, the nurseries and all that were allowed to initiate another 4 treatment centers licenses. So that number, I think, is now over 20. It's about 22. It's either 22 or now going over that. But that's medicinal. This ballot initiative allows the legislature, should it choose to in the future, allow not just medical marijuana treatment centers, but all sorts of businesses to just start licensing the retail sale of marijuana as well.
Whoa. So we're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So that sounds like, could Walmart start selling marijuana? Like, what's going on?
So maybe Walmart sells the marijuana accessories, right? And I can't. This becomes such a Pandora's box of possibility.
Yeah, you're not.
Yeah, because there's
Wait,
pharmacies down
yeah.
right in that area. There's pharmacies.
Yeah, and so our focus as a staff, based on, the commission direction previously, was, where is primarily the substance going to be sold? And we really honed in and focused on that. And our clear direction was try to keep it to US 1 wherever possible.
100%.
But we put the minimum distance requirements in here, and that's why we want to solicit feedback is how far should we go with that? The legal limit might be, to the point where you're now completely excluding it by distance and
15 miles.
Right. And so, we don't know what that is, but we're happy to, put those distances in.
So I think that, from what I'm understanding, from what we're saying, is keep it to 2,500 minimum feet between the dispensaries and the schools.
Okay.
And then if it's possible to limit, like you only can get a certain number of permits within the city to build them, like just so that there's not all of a sudden, like we don't want to be like, I'm sure it might be certain counties are very friendly to this, so everybody's traveling to certain counties, like.
And they can go there.
Yeah. So
What I would say, just based on my, I have more of a formal legislative background.
Yeah.
What I would say is what's most likely to be preempted is that sort of policy on limiting number. So what a lot of cities have done in situations like that is limit, in lieu of limiting number or completely prohibiting the use or activity, they limit it essentially by codifying it to specific areas and districts.
Yeah.
And that's been upheld for a long time.
yeah, that's what I think.
So the 2,500.
Limiting the zoning in the feet from distances, that's going to limit it.
Okay,
Limit the
that's what
number.
we want.
And the size of the building.
So,
Okay.
so we need to look at the school distance. We need to look at the distance from each other.
And then the building size?
The no smoking in the parks. What else?
Yes.
This building size. Are there other things that we're recommending on tonight?
Well, we did have, it was, perhaps it could be worded better or more inclusive, more detail. We sort of just did a basic cover, but on section F of that part of code was the noise, lighting, and odor discussion. It's impossible to tell how far the legislature is going to go on this. In some states, they allow even the agricultural use right there in the same kind of locations that sell retail. And so some of the concerns of those locations is like sound, generators powered at night in the adjacency of the building. So we tried to have something at least in code that speaks to it at the beginning, but it's, like I said, too much of a Pandora's box to go into because we just don't know how far the legislature is going to regulate this at that level.
What about the odor for downtown? Is there a way to basically not have people smoking marijuana? Because I get it, like cigarettes, like that's really hard. We have a cigar shop, but is there a way that we could? Because that's the worst. If you've ever been to a
it's the
city like
worst.
Seattle or something like that, it's disgusting. And
Yeah, because if
nobody
they're allowed
wants-
to smoke cigarettes
nobody
walking
wants to visit
down,
it.
why couldn't they smoke a joint if it's
Yeah.
legal now?
So at least at our public facilities, that new ordinance that we've proposed is, in addition to the LDC changes here, would prohibit it within 50 feet of these public locations, the parks, the Riverwalk, our buildings.
So if you're out in front of the Gafford and one table smoking a cigarette, could somebody else be smoking pot? Because that's not necessarily 50 feet from the Riverwalk. Or Luna's on the other side.
I'm concerned of how the state's going to preempt that in the future, and they might just ubiquitously make it illegal everywhere. Anyway, but we're also preempted on regulating certain activities. For example, when I say smoking any substance, as it says on our draft ordinance, something we have to add before we go to final, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, is cigars. Cigars would be exempt from this. Not because I like cigars, because
legally
the
covered.
state exempted those cigars in recent last two or 3 years.
Could you say no
so-
smoking on public sidewalks?
That's a slippery slope. It's a traditional public forum, and that's more of a question for Lee.
You can't sleep on them. Can you smoke on them? Like, right? I mean, is that a thing?
I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on it, but I would.
Because I'm just thinking of like, how do you might not be, you might have to go to US 1 to buy it, but that's not going to stop you from bringing it
I
into
agree. I
downtown.
think
And you might not be able to sit on the Riverwalk, but maybe you could stand at City
the
Hall.
intent is not to smell that anywhere.
Yeah, for it to be
downtown.
covering
I understand.
downtown.
Like, how
Yeah.
are we
I
gonna
guess
do that?
at this stage, we're trying to limit, people hanging out in front of a
Yeah.
store in
Yeah.
downtown or selling it downtown. And obviously, we do have a public land in downtown area where they wouldn't, and we do have like the fireworks and stuff, they wouldn't be able to smoke it there when we do like the fireworks show for the 4th of July. And Memorial Park, they won't be able to smoke it there.
But Christmas parade on Ocean, sitting on the sidewalk?
With the
Like, you
kids
know.
walking by.
I agree.
Well, I mean, some of it, if it's going to be legal, it's going to be legal, but if as much as we can do to kind of limit it to those
I mean,
public
you can't take
venues and,
alcohol outside, right? You're not allowed to.
I don't know, can you drink wine on Ocean? Not that I've ever done that, but.
Right. In a
I-
special cup.
I don't know the answer to that I would have to look at that one, but obviously, if you're intoxicated, a police officer could.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's that part of getting
Right.
to. So I wonder if we
Yeah.
can look at it similar to how is alcohol.
Yeah, I wonder if
consumption-
that's like a law enforcement
Right.
question. I agree.
Within the city handled, like, can I walk
Do we have
down the
open
street with
container
beer
laws?
or a
We don't
bottle
have
of
open-
Jack
You know,
Daniels?
if they're,
That's open containers.
it
Yeah.
would be a nightmare for the police to regulate every
Well, I'm not saying they're
sidewalk.
regulated, right? You're never going to stop everybody from
Right.
doing everything,
But all
but
they
at
gotta
least
do
if
is-
you
But you
have
could have it on
on
record.
record.
Sit in the
Yeah.
curb. Yeah, sit in
But
the
you
street.
understand the intent is that.
And I
don't
remember
wanna
the county,
smell
it was difficult
marijuana.
regulating in the parks. I remember even in Hal Patioki, they had, one deputy out there, and it was tough. It was vaping was what was bothering everybody.
and that's a good
The
point.
kids playing sports, and they're some.
Maybe getting a recommendation from the Stewart Police
Oh,
Department.
that's a great idea. Could we do that? Could we get a recommendation from Stewart Law Enforcement on what they think is a way that could be enforced?
Right.
I mean, in fact, we did not even think to get their input on it.
No,
That's
no,
why
no,
we're doing it.
that absolutely is what you should be doing.
Yeah, because they're unfortunately, whatever's decided, they're going to
They're
have
gonna
to
have to enforce.
enforce,
Right,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in full
I mean,
tra-
besides the actual building of
that's a
a
great point.
facility, but,
Right.
yeah.
In full transparency, we sort of stumbled into, well, maybe we should be also including this. Originally, we started with only LDC changes. For your edification, the one thing that we do have included in language right now, and this spoke to something you mentioned earlier, I'll just read it. It shall be unlawful for the owner or operator of any marijuana dispensary to encourage any guest or customer to loiter outside of the building, around adjacent properties, or in designated parking areas, including the use of any substance or product procured from the dispensary. So although we may not necessarily be able to enforce every sidewalk, at least what we're doing is holding business owners accountable to say, you know, people who are coming in to purchase in your property, you're not just allowing them
I
just
think
to
about
walk
the kava
outside.
bar, right?
Yeah.
In
Right.
Colorado, they hang out there in front and they drink their kava, which I don't have a problem with, but I'm just saying that I could see a dispensary being very similar.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the concern is, does the kava bar suddenly get a license to sell
Right. marijuana,
also?
Yeah.
Not
no,
that they
I-
would, but just, you know.
Right.
I agree. And
Well,
the-
isn't there
yeah,
a
the smell
vape
issues.
place next to the kava bar, I think, wasn't there a glass something? I don't know, I feel like that's
Maybe.
adjacent. I don't know.
Are there any states that have gone through this and have like do's and don'ts?
Oh,
lessons learned?
absolutely. It's funny because Chris and I especially talking. Chris started, he has experience in Colorado, not necessarily with this, but he has experience of what it's like to be there.
Yeah.
And our city manager, same thing. And there's so many aspects we would have liked to touch, but the state ties our hands at a
Okay.
local level. So this is our best snapshot of what we feel we can touch, especially even this is anticipating something that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And it sounds like if it does get approved, you're going to get more guidance from the state, and they're going to kind of.
And from our commission as well, before we go to final. This was our kind of our first draft. There's some scrivener's errors and other things that we need to tidy up, plus your recommendations. I believe it was, if staff's hearing it correctly, 2,500 for both distance requirements?
Yep.
Okay.
And schools, yep.
Okay.
And I think from what we've said is, instead of like this larger area where the small area where it's excluded, to really just limit it to US 1 and
US 1
industrial or whatever it's called
Yeah,
north of
which is
the
all
bridge.
pretty much off
And
US 1 anyway.
basically the rest of those areas, because I just don't see that that's being a responsible placement.
And what I'll reiterate, and it caused confusion earlier on, and I apologize, is the two maps. The purpose we felt of the two maps is, one is the map that we show that shows all the areas that can potentially go and be allowable use in the future. That's a kind of just for standard zoning. This, what I call exclusion zone map that we'll create as a new figure, we want that also, in case code changes and zoning changes,
Right.
this zone can just survive
Yeah,
those
but
future
that's why I think that
changes.
exclusion zone should be larger, because
I agree.
because zoning changes all the time. This is why we're here, right?
Yeah, I
Like, this
agree.
is why these
Once it
meetings
changes.
happen.
Yeah.
So it could change at any time, and I think making that exclusion zone larger and having it go down Ocean and being in East Stewart as well by the school and the Boys and Girls Club and
Yeah.
10th Street, like those all need to be included areas in the city of Stewart.
And even, like I said, even over, because you have St. Joe's off 10th Street, you have Redeemer over near the new Starbucks, maybe.
And you know what, and north of the bridge, I know that you showed a little area that it could be, isn't there Felix up there? Felix Elementary? So there,
Felix
I know
Williams
there's some
is right behind
industrial.
Baker.
There's some
Yeah.
industrial stuff in there, but you wouldn't really want it, like, it should stay on US 1 and not go up
Not go
towards. Because there's
towards-
Haney Creek
yeah.
Park there, there's Felix,
Yeah.
there's.
Felix
those
is right
areas
there
should
on
be
Baker. It's
part of the
right where
exclusion.
that area is carved out, right there.
Which I know it has to be 20, we're asking for 2,500 feet from that anyway, but we should exclude it as
Yeah,
well.
I agree.
I just want to point out that right there at the corner of US 1 and Baker Road is our Haney Creek Preserve.
Right.
That pink property, that is a preserve area too, so that would never be. And the stuff west on, or east on Baker Road is Avonlea Commerce Park. There's a current dispensary just the top of the screen, north where it says highway. It's not in the county.
Right next to my daughter's dance studio.
But it's just, nope, stop, go down a little bit.
Convenient.
Right around Federal Highway where it says the text across on the west side is the True.
True
I think
Leaf
that's
or
a
something?
Leaf, yeah.
And isn't
The
there
True
one
Leaf.
over by where, like, it used to be Sunny's? Isn't there
So
another
there's a Grow
dispense?
Healthy next to Sunny's where the old dentist office used to be, and there's also a Cure Leaf, I believe.
The Cure Leaf would be on the east side of US 1, further
By the
north,
suburban
outside our boundary, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's,
Oh,
that's Mark.
okay. So do you need something, a formal
Yeah, do
motion
you
from
need
us?
formal, or are you just got the recommendations?
I feel pretty comfortable.
Okay, you know what we want.
We were verbal enough
Gave you
for
enough
you?
to do.
So we don't need to vote on anything.
No, I mean, we do appreciate it very much because
No, we're glad
we
you,
just.
honestly, I would just like to say, and I would be happy to tell Mike Mortel this too. I like the idea that this is the type of thing you're bringing to us. I wish we would get more of this type of thing because we are here, as representatives of the city and of people who live in the city. And so asking our input on things like this as people that are business owners, that are parents, that have, been here for years, this is the type of thing I think we should be doing more of.
Right. And I was going to say at the beginning of the meeting too, I mean, I just appreciate, because we're not supposed to talk to each other when we're out, I don't really know everybody, but, this is, I appreciate the back and forth, because otherwise, when everybody's holding their cards close to their chest and you don't really know what everybody's thinking, so this is a nice way to flesh some of it out.
I agree. So please, I think if we have more of these type of things, I think that's a wonderful use for this board.
Well, we appreciate it very much, and Jody, you guys good? Okay, I think we have everything we need.
All right. Do we have any staff updates? Nothing?
No, Chair.
All right. We're adjourned.
Thank you for being here.